Unless we decided to continue our stories from last week.
I would rather not. We need some time to breathe, for it to breathe.
I think we're still recovering.
Yeah.
From last week. I was like, after we filmed last week, telling parts of our story, and then I was rethinking about what I had said, I started getting a headache again. A, it felt really scattered. B, because I'm the type of person who wants to give you as much information as possible, much detail, I try to really put myself back in that space to really convey the emotion.
Sure.
And so that kind of put me in a mood.
Sure.
Kind of put me in a mood afterward.
You know, I was going
really
to make a video to do some editing, and I saw it, the whole thing over. And you know, like part of editing is you have
to pass over.
You have to return. You have to go back over it and just listen for the little, like, try to capture. So I was listening to very, very intensely, and your story actually seemed a lot more well composed than it did in real life. Like in real life, I was like, all right, where's she going with this? But watching the video, it was very well connected. It was very well connected.
Maybe because you had heard it once already in person, and then when you're editing, you're like, oh, I know where this is going now. So it made more cohesive sense. So I apologize to anyone.
So listen to it twice.
I apologize if it didn't really make sense. Honestly, when I was listening to myself talk, it didn't make much sense. And I'm going to refine that story so I don't get all like sweaty and nervous telling it. So the next time I tell that in person, they'll get a refined version, just a well-practiced, rehearsed version of it.
Sure.
Yeah. I know some people like things more like raw and honest.
I think a lot of people would appreciate it.
I feel like those
are actually very
raw to the point of being rough. Just like undercooked raw, that kind of raw. Not like good, not like fine sushi raw. Just this can give you a stomach ache raw.
I feel you.
Thank you for being patient with me.
I like it. So tell me, Angela.
Yeah.
So you have something on your mind regarding like what real care is?
Oh, yeah. Prior to us starting recording, I was telling him what was on my mind. As we do every week, we ask each other like, "What's on your mind?" And this week, I was telling him a conversation I had with my husband. How I noticed how he was posting something on someone's Facebook a while back, and then like wishing them happy birthday. And this person that he was posting, let's just say that there had been like somewhat of a falling out, without getting too much into detail. And Johnny has tried to somewhat salvage that relationship over time, but there hasn't been much response. And from my understanding of it, it's because the person that he's trying to salvage the relationship with is just unwilling to look at their own actions and deal with the consequences of past events that got them to this point, and is just completely afraid of confrontation. Doesn't want to engage in any kind of processing or ownership of their role in the fallout. Even though Johnny's been trying to, be open and try to continue dialogue and just want to be real with emotions, this other person is not really willing to do that, to do any of that. But they would respond in kind. They would wish happy birthday to Johnny, let's say, or like on certain holidays they would, Merry Christmas. But I asked Johnny, I'm like, what do you, my husband, I was asking him, like, what do you hope to gain out of this? And he's like, well, because I still care. And I'm like, I understand that you still care, but you've actually made strides to do things. And the other person, I'm sure, also would like to say that they care. But does that really mean they care if they're just saying words? If they're just giving you pretty things and pretty thoughts to satiate that desire to have a relationship, is that really considered care? Or is that really more of a self-serving thing? And he had to think about it. And I know that's not easy to hear because we don't, I will say of people that we tend to be a very optimistic sort. We want to believe the best in people. And that's beautiful. I don't want anyone to lose that. But I'm also a believer in observing the reality of a situation and judging people more by their actions than by their words. Words are important. Words are very powerful. Don't get me wrong. But if there's not an alignment in what you're saying and what you're doing, then you have to ask yourself why. Why do those things not align? And where usually the real intent or the real meaning lies in what the person's doing. Needless to say, he didn't really argue with me on the fact. He knew that there was truth in that. But he's still holding on to, past associations, past feelings. And I get that. That's really hard for a lot of people to let go. And that's his process. No matter how many times I will say, this person doesn't really care about you. Really. Not in the way that you're hoping. Or if they've changed, I don't think they're doing a great job of showing it. But some things have to be experienced rather than just said. And I understand that. And I hope to be wrong. I never hope to be right about these kinds of things. I would rather be proven wrong, but normally in these cases I'm proven right. Have you ever had an instance where maybe you held out hope for a friend or a family member for a while, hoping that they really do care about you, but finding out that's not really the case? Is it something that you have dealt with?
I mean, in terms of my own siblings, for instance, there's still a part of me that hopes that they'll come around, because there's a part they've essentially shunned me away in a sense for not participating in the same religion. And there's just so much reasonable evidence to go against that belief. That
which one? Which evidence? This could be
the shunning away a family member for different beliefs.
Okay.
So there's so much evidence to prove that it's just unhealthy for so many reasons. So many stories around, siblings that had a falling out and have gone decades, in many cases without talking.
And specifically with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
Because
other
from what I understand,
religions do it too.
Other religions do it too, but I know because you grew up Jehovah's Witness, I understand even if it's a family member, if they're not of the same religion, that you have to shun that person, correct?
Right.
Specifically.
Right.
And I've heard this from other Jehovah's Witness friends too.
Sure, yeah. To teach me a lesson.
This is out of love.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, so they're saying, I care about you, therefore,
right,
get out of my face.
Yeah. Until you find your way back to God, and then. Okay. So there's but at the same time, these are people that I always remember. These are, for me, it's they're big babies, because I remember specifically growing up with them. I remember there was a time where it was just playful and fun, and it wasn't there was a time before it got really stringent with the beliefs. And I still remember that, vividly. Yeah. And
when you were just kids.
Yeah, when you were just kids, when you're just playing, and you don't take offense to things, or
right.
You don't take things personally.
You're really just in your feels, and kids are the best at being in the moment. What's important to me right now?
Exactly. And so I remember the times of just growing up and playing with my siblings, and I just feel like they might come around, and if they don't, I'm okay with it too. So I'm not. I don't. The good thing about my family is they don't celebrate holidays, so there isn't awkward happy birthdays.
There is the silver lining. Therein lies the wisdom.
Yeah.
of that religion.
I dig it. In retrospect, I mean, that religion has a lot of truth in it.
Yeah.
I feel all of them do. They all speak the truth.
They all speak the truth, but in depending on the situation. So in terms of awkwardness, at least they're circumventing one awkwardness in place of another.
Yeah, and at the same time, a lot of the times I feel like in the movie Jumanji, the
new one,
not the newest one, but the second one.
Oh, the second one.
Yeah, the
featuring
first
The
new
Rock.
one.
Yeah, the first.
The first new one. Where they go into the game, and in the game they find this guy in a Jeep that gives them a ride, and he's explaining the game to them.
Right.
Right? And it gets to the point where he drops them off, and they ask him another question, and he just repeats himself. Like, because he's a non-player character, meaning he's not conscious. He has a role to play. Yeah. So I feel a certain large percentage of humanity, we're filling in that role. Like, we're just here to, a conscious person talks to us for the first time, and we're not going to get it, because we're just in our loop. This is what we're doing. Like, the idea of going away from that isn't even in my universe. So I feel like most people are stuck in that loop. Most people are going to be in that place of just repeating the things that they've heard their entire life. And people, obviously, like us, we snap out of it at some point, and I feel like people are snapping out of it now more than ever. And that it's like you're saying that just that dry care, where it's like, okay, I'll send them a text message because this person's been in my life my whole life. So it's just like the bare minimum amount of care.
Yeah.
But it's just like a programmed amount of care. Like, this is the amount of care that I've been programmed to give. It's
a kind of care.
Yeah.
But you have to put it into perspective, like how much. Like, I'm just saying, it's not to say like don't text anyone ever, because that's meaningless. Like, no, I'm not saying that either.
Absolutely.
But it's just put it in its proper perspective, is what I'm saying. Like, I only care so much about this. Is really what I'm saying. And don't confuse that with being this grand gesture. I think a lot of people want to believe there's more there than there is.
Sure.
Which is a beautiful intention, but it's a delusion. Ultimately, it's a delusion. So and there's plenty of times where I only care so much to send someone a text message or just wish them a Facebook happy birthday. That's cool. That's where we stand. That's the level. That's as far as we go, right? There's other people in my life where, even if they're across the country and they were to call me and say, I need you, I would drop everything. Yeah. And fly, like, I would get the next plane to them. And that's how much I care about that person. And there are a good number of people who I would do that for. Then there's the people who I would just, care enough to every now and then just be like, hey, you want to go to lunch? And, that's fine too. It depends. Like, my relationships with different people have evolved according to just that, the chemistry and the experiences that we've had together. Just know where you stand on that, and be clear about it. But don't do this thing where you're like, oh, I love, like, I'm really cautious about saying I love you to people. Because I really want to mean that when I say it. Or, giving people pet names. I don't want to give people the wrong impression. Like how, again, it's innocuous. It's innocuous, like calling people dear, or like, oh, my love, or even the word, like, let's say sister, brother. That gets thrown out a lot, especially in, like, spiritual circles. Like, oh, you're my brother, oh, you're my sister, stuff like that. But you know that if it came down to it, that's not really that. On a larger universal scale, sure, yeah, we're all brothers and sisters. But on this, like, kind of 3D plane, real talk, how far would I go with you? It's not really brother-sister. So I tend to be very conscientious when I use words like that. Yeah. Yes, they're labels, but, labels help us understand the degrees to which we adhere to them in those relationships. I actually did call you my brother, though. You're one of those people.
I know, absolutely.
You're one of those people I would drop everything for.
For sure.
For sure.
Anytime.
No. But you know what I mean.
Absolutely. But you were saying something earlier about how that level of care.
I say a lot of
Like
things.
there's a level of care where somebody doesn't do it for you, but they push you so that you can do it yourself.
Ah,
Can
I
you
was
say
saying that
that
earlier.
part
Yeah,
again?
I was talking about I there is a relative of mine who has had a history of dating men in particular, who kind of fit a certain archetype, which is like that knight in shining armor. And usually they're providing something for her, whether it's security, whether it's, you know, they're just good looking, whatever it is. And on a fundamental level, because this relative is usually struggling or worried about money or just worried about her livelihood or status, she's always hoping someone will save her. She's always hoping someone will sweep her off her feet and be that knight in shining armor and just whisk her away from her life. And my older sister was having a session with her and was trying to help her understand that, you know, any man who comes to you and says, I'm going to rescue you, I'm going to take you out of this place, I'm going to make all your worries go away, all your problems go away, he's not a real hero to you. He's not really there to help you or to save you. He cannot save you. And if anything, he's probably saying that because he wants something from you. He wants something from you that's not always in your best interest. That's usually not in your best interest. A real hero, or someone who really cared about you, would say, no, I'm not going to save you. The only hero in your story is you. That, like, someone who really cared about you would help you realize that you can save you. I'll be here to support, but really, it's up to you. I believe in you. Someone who can help build you up and not take away your agency. That's someone who really cares about you. And going back to my husband, like, his care, like, he wants to go to the person he was talking to and be like, look, I'm willing to put everything aside if you're just willing to hear me and understand where I'm coming from and help me help you, basically. But if that person's not willing, no matter how much you want to help, it's pointless. But that's what I was talking about when it's like, it doesn't seem like care. It can seem like, oh, you don't want to help me, but no, that person is believing in you. They believe that you have what it takes in you to heal yourself.
Yeah.
That tends to be my kind of love too.
Yeah.
Yeah, which can oftentimes be considered tough love.
That's the right kind of love. It reminds me of when I was a kid, like in third grade. I had this really, like, a report that was really difficult. And I remember my dad started helping me with it, and he ended up doing it. It was very impressive, right?
Top-notch quality stuff. Even your teacher was like, oh, dang.
Yeah, like,
this is very mature. He's very, very wise for his age.
right. And it was a lot of work, you know. Obviously, the eight-year-old didn't do it. You know, in retrospect, I didn't know any better, right? And you know, now I look back at it, and it looked like my dad cared enough to help me with my homework, and it did. And absolutely,
on the surface,
absolutely, that is what happened. Mm-hmm. But it also was more like he cared more about what other people thought of, like, his son getting good grades or something like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Where was the care? what is the real reason for that care?
Right.
Is it because is it for your well-being? Is it for their own?
Right.
Really, in that case, if you look at the real core of that, your father just wanted to save face.
Right.
Your father's like, I don't want to have a kid that looks dumb.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of families, particularly Asian families, I grew up with this. My parents wanted me to get good grades. But I don't think ultimately it's part of it is for my happiness, I guess, because they're thinking, oh, she gets good grades, she'll make a lot of money, she'll be happy. But I know a good part of it is so they can brag to their friends.
Sure.
I would say the foremost thought in their mind is so they can say how great their child is compared to their kids.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
You get a lot of that.
I think
Absolutely.
I thought I got a lot of that because I would hear that growing up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then behind the scenes, be like, "You're not that great. You're not that special. Go back and study." You know, I'm not sure if that really builds up one's self confidence.
That's weird. It's weird because it's in retrospect, it's obviously done on an unconscious level. They're not really thinking things through.
No, I'm sure they don't even realize that. I'm sure. Again, they, like I said last week, you know, a lot of adults, a lot of parents do what they know how to do, and I'm probably projecting, or I am I'm putting my own understanding on their actions, and I'm sure they haven't even thought about it that far. I'm sure there's not much depth if they were to really think about it. They're just like, it's good for you. Like, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
It's just more of a should and should not, and it's not really conscious thinking. Which is why it's so important to understand the why of why you're doing anything. It's ultimately the why. I forget who came up with this, but there was someone who was talking about when you are trying to figure out your business, it's the most important thing you have to figure out is why you're doing it. Then the next thing is the how. Then the next thing is the what, which is like, usually in a business, the what would be the product. What is it? The how is like, okay, how are you going to go about doing this thing? The why is the more important thing. The why is what most people relate to.
Right.
Like the kind of like when you're talking about branding, like how someone identifies with it, the why. Like, why is this thing being made? Is there a story behind this? Is there a socially conscious concept behind this? Is there a real need for this? And so going back, tying it back to what we were talking about in the beginning with the care, why is this person really doing this?
Right.
Why are they wishing you a happy birthday? Is it because that's just the level of their care? Is it also because they're just doing that to show you that they care, but really they don't really care, but they want to appear that they care?
Sure.
There's multiple layers. It's rarely as simple as one answer.
Yeah, there's many layers, and they have. I mean, who's going to go through them? Nobody's going through these layers. So we just leave things on surface levels for the most part. For most of our relationships, I would say so. We probably just leave things.
And this is why it's really hard for me to make friends. This is why I think people find me intimidating in friendship, because I'm rarely comfortable or complacent with just leaving things surface level. I'm very capable of being nice, but just being nice to me isn't the full, like, you're not really getting into the depth of a friendship. I feel like friendship is much more complex than that, and is willing to go to places that are uncomfortable in the moment, but are
Absolutely
much better for you in the long run. And that tends to be my brand of friendship. Again, it's not better or worse. If you want to keep things light, like I know people who just are friends with everyone,
Sure.
but they seem happy.
Sure.
Right? And if that works for them, that's cool. It doesn't necessarily work for me though.
Yeah. I mean, it goes really back to knowing who you are.
Yeah.
What kind of person you are. I don't like superficial things. I don't like light. I don't like small talk. You know, I'm just not into it. I can do it. Like, I'll pretend for a little while, like you. You know, you probably do it better than me.
I'm better. I'm way better
you're
at it.
better at
I'm
it.
way better at filling time.
Yeah. But for the most part, I think in my personal life, I want to have those just few deep relationships rather than many scattered.
See, I actually respect you, though, in that regard. Because you're totally, okay with just letting conversation die out if it doesn't, really interest you. And I actually really admire that. Because I know on some level, I know I was just calling out people before, in a way, but I need to call myself out at some point, because I'm also the type who doesn't want to make people feel uncomfortable. So I'm very willing to prattle on
Sure.
and fill a time and make someone feel like like someone's interested in them,
Sure.
even if I'm not terribly interested in them.
I feel
Now,
that.
is that so? I haven't really thought about this. Is that fake? Is that fake?
That's a good question.
Or is that just me trying, in a way, even if I don't really care, but by virtue of acting like I care, because I care about just your happiness, your comfort. Is that real politeness? Is that real kindness?
I mean, I think you can take that in a case-by-case basis. It depends, I would say. If I was to, it just depends how well you know someone and how far you're willing to take this. Like, how far are we going to take this small talk? And there's only a matter of time. There's only a matter of time where I can fake it, and before not too long, the fake smiles are gonna just diminish on their own. It's not like I'm.
That is true. I do try to find a way, in situations where I feel like it goes too long, I do try to find a way to like slowly phase myself out of that conversation. I can't do it incessantly, but I probably do it longer than I should. Yeah. I think on some level it's me not wanting to appear impolite.
I feel that too. I feel like it's because we don't know how long that person is planning on talking. But sometimes I know it. I want to give people an opportunity to express themselves.
Yes.
And I
That's
do.
true.
But sometimes I notice that they ramble. and if they don't get like reeled back in,
Yeah.
meaning like at least they have to. Some people are not conscious like of you not being interested in what they're saying.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of let it know by like. I don't know.
I need to get better cues.
Sure.
I need to start looking at like wall clocks, or I need to get a watch.
And before you know it, just fake it. Just be like.
Even if I don't have a watch,
Yeah, just look at your wrist.
Oh, look at the.
Yeah, that'll
look at
give
the
them
time.
a real signal that they're not interested.
Okay.
That may or may not be good advice. I don't know. It may or may not work. It may work on occasion.
Edit. You need to write this etiquette. I'm really looking forward to this etiquette book that you're about to write.
Sure.
Yeah. Manners in 2020.
Sure.
Yeah. I think
We
it's
can do
good.
that.
I think manners have changed over time, don't you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, things are way different.
Do you wish there was? Because I think there's a shift in where, let's say, for example, when some of my female friends will go out with someone and that person like opens doors for them, or like, let me just do things like puts their coat on for them. They're like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so gentlemanly.
Sure. Well, they say chivalry is dead. I've heard that.
Yeah.
People say that.
Yeah.
I don't really believe it. It's not in my world. Like in my world, I open doors for people, and people open doors for me.
Right.
Like
okay.
girls do it to me. I do it to boys. I do it like it's just
Yeah.
like it's like if you got there like and you have a minute, like hold it for somebody that's behind you. Seems like
Sure.
pretty reasonable. It's happened to me my entire life. I have no reason to believe it's going away.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's the type of people that certain friends of mine are hanging out with, or certain acquaintances of mine. I kind of feel more what you're talking about, where like if in my world, it's just
Right.
something that you do is courtesy. That's just you want to do that because you care. Again, you
Sure.
genuinely care. You want to make someone's life a little bit easier. Random thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good point. I like this stopping point for our conversation.
Is
How
that
do you feel about that? This is a good one.
This is a good one. Fun topic.